Hi, everyone. This is AABailey, and this is my case study for Golden Oak High School. So, to start off, summarizing the case a little bit, Golden Oak was established in 1966. It's a large suburban high school, 965 students in grades 9 through 12, somewhat diverse population, mostly middle class families, many extracurricular activities. Golden Oak has passed recognition for having the highest attendance rate in all of the high schools in the district, but in recent years, this has started to really decline, and approximately 85% of the student population now misses more than 10 days a year. Last year, Golden Oak had the lowest student attendance percentage among all the high schools in the district, and already this year, 68% of the kids have already missed more than 10 days of school just after the first semester. So, who is involved or concerned about this situation? Mr. Rhodes, of course, he's a first year principal at Golden Oak. And when he met with the superintendent, he was told that there were several instructional program problems. The most pressing concern was attendance. But the fact that the superintendent said that there were several instructional program problems does make it evident that this is a complicated issue. Also, we have students and their parents. They're, of course, involved in the situation. It's important to note that most parents work industry or small business jobs, and most parents have a 1 to 2 hour commute to work each day. Due to these long commutes and job obligations, the case study said that many parents have little time to support their kids in their after school activities. We also have many school personnel involved. There's the attendance counselor and the social emotional needs counselor. They were mentioned in the case study, but not really discussed at length. There's also secretaries who would be making phone calls to parents. The athletic director is discussed in the case study. We need to consider the school board. And then, of course, the teachers. It's interesting to note that Golden Oak has a reputation for very low teacher turnover. Most teachers have at least 10 years' experience in the school, and each year there's only one or two new teachers. I found this really remarkable that in a school of 965 students, there would be this low of teacher turnover. So, what do the parties involved have to say? Well, Dr. Newman, the superintendent, his first bit of advice to Mr. Rose was to work closely with social services and the juvenile court system. I found this to be an interesting statement that this is where he went to first. That struck me. I think that we need to look into that a little bit. Also, the school counselor and the attendance counselor, they were both mentioned in the case study, but not extensively. And I feel like they play a really important role in this. So we definitely need to talk to them because I'm not exactly sure what they have to say about the situation at this point. The case study singled out 5 students in particular out of the over 600 kids who have already missed so many days. I believe it's important to talk with them and get their point of view and not just what the case study says. They all had very different situations, and it will be important to hear their voices. We also need to speak with the truancy officers and see how many students they're currently working with out of those 659. In the 5 case studies, there was only one mention of a student being turned into a truancy officer. I'm I'm very curious to see how many of those kids that they actually report. We also need to talk to all of the teachers of those 5 students and the athletic director. I believe that it's very important to look at the perception data and hear from other people in the community, not just the parents and the students and the teachers, see what they have to say if they've noticed this attendance issue in the local high school. So there's also legal and ethical considerations. The first question is: has anyone been harmed by these actions? And if so, how? So we have a responsibility to provide a safe environment for our kids, to provide them a quality education, to adhere to the laws and the policies. So, does the action contravene an existing law? Well, school board policy is aligned with the state law, and it says very clearly that excused absences are only allowed For illness, death in the immediate family, inclement weather, or other valid reasons excused by the principal. It does appear that this is not the case when so many kids have been missing so much school. We are ethically and legally bound to apply these laws and regulations per our policies. The school district does say that teachers have the authority to deduct 10 points from a student's total number for the quarter for excessive unexcused absences. I found this to be a rather small punishment. 10 points out of an entire quarter's worth of work isn't going to really be a much to deter a student from skipping school. But I think it would be interesting and important to look and see if teachers are doing this. Are they deducting these points? So, do these actions contravene an existing law? Well, it appears so. These kids are missing a lot of school, but we do need to look more into things. Was there a breach of contract and were actions discriminatory? Well, I would say I don't know that yet because all kids need to be treated fairly and as equally as possible. Only one of the 5 had the truancy officer mentioned. I definitely think there needs to be a deliberate, thorough review of this. So, our current situation in one sentence would be that we have the responsibility to educate our students to the best of our ability. Therefore, we must work together to raise our attendance rate, hold all stakeholders accountable in doing their part to help our students reach their full potential. Synthesize the facts. So, known facts of the case. We know we have a very low teacher turnover. We know that Golden Oak has not always struggled with attendance. We also know that 68% of the students have already missed more than 10 days this first semester. There does not appear to be any commonality really in these absences. We know that there are many extracurricular opportunities for the kids to be at school. We also know that parents have long commute times. So, things that we don't know. There's a very low teacher turnover rate, which is terrific, but we don't know why. We don't know how. We need to get some perception data on that. I think that could be an important piece of this. We don't know what's going on with this attendance rate. Golden Oak has not always struggled. So, when did this decline begin? If there's low teacher turnover, have there been admin changes? We don't know why we went from a high attendance rate to the lowest in the district. We also don't know what the correlation is between extracurricular activities and days kids were absent. I think it would be really important to look at this data and see, with all of these opportunities for extracurricular activities, can we see our students making sure that they're at school on days of activities and missing days that they're not? That may be a red flag for if these absences are um, really warranted. We also don't know for sure what's going on as far as the parental involvement in this. Parents have long commute times. The case study says that many parents have 1 to 2 hour commute times. So, do they know that their kids aren't at school? That was one of the first things I thought when I read this case study. Brene Brown, in particular, I've heard her say before, what if we assume that people are doing the best they can? And if we assume that these parents are doing the best they can, they have long commute times. They're probably leaving for work before their kids are getting up and going to school. Maybe they don't know their kids aren't at school. If they're missing 8 to 10 days a semester, that's a couple of times a month. I don't know. Maybe we should assume first that the parents might not realize how serious this problem is. Okay, so to review and prioritize the information, could this conflict be damaging to stakeholders? Absolutely. We have district policies, we have laws, we have funding, we have school reputation. Um, which individuals have important stakes? Everyone does. The students, the parents, the admin, the school board. We also have a responsibility to uphold school level governance. We want to make sure that our school is accredited, that we get funding, that we are doing our part to educate our kids. So, have all the relevant stakeholders been consulted before we take action? I think that's where we need to pause. We need to remember that our plan of action will also affect these kids and their families. And even though it is a very serious situation and we need to be aware of the laws and the policies, we also need to remember that we're working with children and their families, and we need to empathize with them and make sure that we are not just assuming bad intentions first. Can I learn more about this situation? Absolutely. Do I know enough to make a decision? I know enough to start. So, what could I do? Well, the first thing I could do is wait. I could study, observe, listen. I could just be very deliberate. It's important to me to advocate for a data informed improvement plan. I want to make sure it's equitable. I want to make sure it focuses on student development to their full potential. So, I could just sit back and really study this first and not make any moves. The other thing that I could do is to act immediately. Rules have been broken, policies have been broken. I could reprimand, I could punish, I could report to truancy officers, I could enforce these things. We could have Saturday school, we could write students up. This is a serious situation. But we also need to build a positive relationship of trust and compassion. So, an in between plan would be maybe a three-part plan to improve the school leadership and the management, involve all of our stakeholders, teachers and staff, students and parents, the community. And then this would help build a rigorous, empathetic school environment. So, in this plan, the teachers and the staff, we could review the policy, come to a common understanding, supportive expectation to abide by the rules. Talk to the kids, have an assembly, go over the handbook, remind, reinforce, grow a culture of high expectations, but also pride in them, in themselves, in their learning, in their school. Talk to the parents, have a meeting. Commutes are long, people are tired. Maybe we could do it over Zoom, post it on social media, really get the message out that we're a team and we need to work together. Talk to the community, go to the school board. Maybe we need to revise the mission statement, set new goals for the future. So, my decision would be to go with that three-part kind of in between plan. But concurrently, I think it's important that we study multiple measures of our data. We need to look at the perception data. We need to look at disaggregated demographics, our school processes, the student learning. Attendance is important, but as the superintendent stated, it's one of our issues. There's other things going on as well. So, my plan to implement for the remainder of this school year would be to study that perception data, send out surveys, talk to people, have discussions with those 5 students that were discussed specifically in the case study, but then discussions with other students, parents, community members, and really study this attendance data. I think we need an attendance review team. We potentially would need to go to the school board and ask for some funding to that. We need to study the trends. We need to track data. And we need to really begin working towards a common implementation of our rules, common expectations, common consequences. Then over the summer, we need to possibly revise our handbook, utilize technology, update our school website, make sure we have a social media presence, study our disaggregated data more. And then when school starts again in August, we need professional development to focus on the importance of this attendance. We need data literacy. We need a plan of action. I believe it's important to have the kids and the parents sign off on the handbook so they know what the expectations are and what the consequences are. And I think that it's important that parents are contacted daily for absent students. If a student's not there first hour, they're marked absent, we need to have an attendance team who makes phone calls and lets parents know. The parents are at work. Do they know that their kids aren't at school? Now, if that doesn't work, we need a plan B. The plan B would then probably be to seek more outside assistance, talk to the superintendent or the school board, involve the truancy officers more, involve social services more. But the big picture is that I believe we need positive, proactive change. We need to educate all of our stakeholders on data, on assessment literacy, on data literacy, on how attendance fits into that, how important it is to be in school every day. We need to have a partnership with our parents. And then we also need to strive for those high expectations. We need the kids to feel valued. We need to see we need them to see that it's important to work hard to reach their full potential, and we need them to have buy-in to want to be in school.